I'm joined right now by the associate editor of the College Fix at collegefix.com, Matt Lamb. He's associate editor there, and it's great to have him here with us this afternoon to give us some perspective on the issue. Matt, good afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
So tenure is something that anyone who starts teaching at a college, they want to get. Very simply, it means job security. I like the idea. I have family members that are teachers. As I said, I have friends that are university professors. But again, it doesn't matter what viewpoint you hold. So what's the idea of denying tenure to new hires, and what difference does that actually make? Because doesn't it take a little while before you get tenure?
Right. So, I haven't read every single thing about his proposal, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, but, first I would be clear, it's not really a denial of tenure. It sounds like he's getting rid of tenure for the future. And I think what's really important here to note is that, no one has an inherent right to tenure or a lifetime job. No one's born with a right to be a tenured professor at, Texas Tech or University of Texas, right? And so I think what's really important is this broader discussion that Lieutenant Governor Patrick made is the idea that, he is an elected official and he represents the interests of Texans. And I think it's really important, especially with public universities, how he is saying, look, the fact that UT Austin can't just say, well, let us do whatever we want. Well, wait a minute, you get paid by the taxpayers, right? Whether it's tuition, state funding, federal funding. So I think it's absolutely appropriate for him to weigh in on how he would like the university run, whether that's we're not going to teach critical race theory, we're not going to offer tenure. And then there can be a debate and a discussion. Does it make it easier to attract different talent? Maybe the universities find they can't attract good talent without tenure. We'll go back and forth. And that's how a political system is supposed to work, of course.
So if tenure is done away with, doesn't that open, wouldn't that make hiring and firing based on the administration's viewpoint at that point in time? What would it do to academic freedom for the person who's coming in and say, hey, I want the liberty, the ability to teach the way I want to teach and help form these students? Now, again, it comes down to, I guess, it would come down to the administration's viewpoint on what they think is appropriate to be taught. But what would happen if it was done away with?
Well, it's a great question. So what we can do, of course, is look at other places outside of academia, and what happens if you go and work for a corporation where you don't have tenure. And maybe it's a similar, maybe you work at a major research corporation, maybe you work at a Facebook, or you work at a nonprofit, a think tank, right? Well, you have to, your employer has expectations. On the flip side, they also, of course, want to attract the best talent. So, would it make it easier to fire people? Well, of course, because tenure makes it almost impossible to fire professors.
Yeah. Obviously, critical race has serious problems, right? That's causing division in our society. Should the state be censoring that viewpoint? I mean, we see, of course, those on the left, they want to censor those on the right. More conservative institutions, do you think they would do the same thing? Would it be payback? I mean, how do you see that, playing out? Does that make sense to you?
It's a great question. I think I would take a little issue with the idea of censoring. So going back to what I said at the beginning, universities are created for a purpose, and through the years, the programs they offer will change, the degrees and certificates. UT Austin wasn't offering a computer science degree in 1935, I'm sure, right? Who knows what they'll be offering in 2050. So there's plenty of programs and degrees and classes that are, not offered. I'm sure you can't take the class on, Roman Catholicism, the traditional Latin math at UT Austin, right? So I have no problem, from a practical sense, a political sense, with a university through the board of governors, the trustees, the state, however their system is set up, saying, look, we're just not going to fund programs and classes in critical race theory. We're also not going to fund, a class on skiing or skateboarding. Not that those are exactly equal, of course. And I think that is totally fair in a democratic republic for the governor and lieutenant governor to make those those views known. I mean, you mentioned 1619 Project, and this idea of the truth. Well, the 1619 Project is just frankly untruthful about America's founding. Does Nicole Anna Jones have a right to teach falsehoods? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a wonderful point. My guest today, if you want to join us, Matt Lamb.